about the injury, that if he's going to be recovered for the beginning of the season, that's a big ask, because the kind of injury that he's had, it's a much longer term injury. And the thing is as well, everybody knows the weak spot. Do you know what I mean? Fitzy's done it once, would he do it again? That's a risk that Manchester has to take.
Dirty Steelers. I couldn't help that. Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely perfectly correct. The thing as well for me, I mean, we never know. He's obviously, you'd have thought, got a wage rise out of Manchester to go there because of his great scoring form. But as I said, is he going to be able to maintain that? A, because of his injury, and B, because of his line mates? It's a gamble, and we'd assume. I am assuming he's got a wage rise, because I don't think he was on big bucks with Braehead when he first came over, because he was a bit of an unknown quantity. Stephen, I mean, I'm not saying would you have been glad to have him back? I would have been glad to have him back, but I would have taken it. I mean, I think if we would have been talking about him coming to the clan, we would have been saying all these things anyway, wouldn't we?
Yeah, I personally think it would have been a big risk to bring him back just because of his injury. You don't know if he's going to be the same player that he was before. As Jen said, you don't even know if he's going to be fully fit in time to start the season, or if we would have had to get someone else. And obviously, he would be looking for a pay rise based on his contribution to his team last year from what he was getting. So I don't think I would have went for it personally. I'm not saying he's not a good player. He was a good player, and he had a lot of, I think he had a 10-point weekend at one point or something ridiculous like that. So obviously the skill and the play is there, but I think it was just too much of a risk going from quite a horrific injury to expect him to be back on time, back playing in time for the season, or even to be the same player that he was. And maybe that's what the clan have looked at. They've probably looked at the finances and maybe said, we could probably get someone else for the same amount of money that we know can be here in time, ready to play and ready to go. And maybe that was part of the decision not to renew the contract, which is something we'll never find out, obviously, but it's what I'm thinking the clan have done, and I would go along with the same thinking if I was in charge of the team.
Okay, another player we've got to wave goodbye to, and a lot would say probably sadly, he was certainly probably top of the list of the guys you'd want back. Scott Pitt, who's going to the Slovak Extraliga with Zilina. Scott Pitt has scored the most goals ever for the clan at 95. It's a bit sad that he wouldn't be back to complete the 100. And the most points in a clan jersey at 206. I think, there's no ifs, buts or maybes about this one, Jennifer. Scott Pitt would love to have back at number 61 next year.
Yeah, I would absolutely love to have him wearing a clan jersey, but in a way, a bittersweet sort of way, I'm glad that he's not in the EIHL, so we won't be facing him as the opposition, because you know how good he is at getting that in the back of the net. So yeah, good luck to him. Obviously he's getting married over the summer, and we kind of wish him and his wife good luck in their new country, but really sad to see him go. He's definitely the one player out of last year's roster I would have loved to have kept.
Yeah, he was absolutely infamous. I mean, he was a game player till, consistently, and then last year he just exploded. 74 points in 52 Elite League games. Absolutely, but in saying that, I mean, he was an absolutely tremendous two-way player as well, wasn't
he? Yeah, I really like Scott Pitt. When they first signed for us, he was a bit of an unknown, but he quickly became a bit of a favourite, and don't know what it was last year, but he just, as you said, exploded out of the gates and just kept putting in goal after goal. And if it wasn't for him and the form that he did last season, you'd wonder where the team would have ended up, because it wouldn't have been too great without him carrying a lot of the load of the team. But best of luck to him. He's earned his move to a better league, and hopefully enjoys his time there, and maybe one day he'll be back. That's me really hoping though, but hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully he kicks on to bigger and better things as well. I mean, Graham, we have conversations every now and then about best player all time, and he's got to be in that conversation for the clan, isn't
he? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, it's a strange thing, and we've said this constantly about him. He's been under the radar in terms of the league overall. I think partially because he plays for the Clan, partially because I think off the ice he's quite an unassuming guy, and on the ice he's just got better and better. It's been a kind of gradual evolution with him, till, as you say, exploded last year. But it's a strange one. He's always seems to have been underrated, and to be honest with you, I expect him maybe to go to one of the so-called big clubs for next season. I think last year was the year that he came out from the radar. Just from under the radar to actually making a name for himself around the league. Certainly, a lot more people were talking about him, as you might expect, with his points total and being part of that line that was. Represented, was the top 3 scorers overall for the league last year?
Basically.
Yeah. So, he's an important part of that. And, of course, the likes of the fans talking about him, long and often. I think he made that breakthrough as far as the league was concerned. So I can only assume that he's had a hell of an offer from Slovakia. I'm not sure, what kind of level the Slovakia league is at. I'm sure it's probably fairly decent. But, I'm assuming he's obviously had a good offer, really, really good offer, because I can't see for the life of me that one of the big teams didn't at least show some fairly strong interest in him. So, I think as Jen has said, I'm quite glad to see him. Although it's a shame that he's left the league, I'm quite glad that he's not come back and, he's playing against us. So, good luck to him in Slovakia. I hope it works out for him.
And that brings us on to one player who will be playing against us next year. Scott Arson tweeted how, I certainly did tweet, thank you to the Clan and the fans, etc. It was a difficult decision for him to leave. And then an hour later or so, maybe 3 hours later, he had signed for the Sheffield Steelers. Well, certainly was announced he was signed for the Sheffield Steelers. That was a bit of a surprise, Stephen, yeah?
Yes, it was. I wasn't expecting that at all. Not because I overly wanted Arson back next year. I just thought, it was Steelers' last signing for the season, and it's not fitting into the mould of what the Steelers fans thought they were getting. They thought they were getting a big clearing defenseman for the most part, and Scott Arson, well, a good player isn't that, but I think I looked at it like Finner. He wasn't at his best the last 2 seasons, and I think it was maybe just the right time for him to move on. And it's probably for the player and the club. I think with the poor season that we had last season, relatively compared to the other ones, that a fresh start was maybe needed. And I think if any of the D-men were brought back, it would have been Scott Arson, because I would cry if it was any of the other ones. But he's a good player. He's racked up points. I think he's consistently hit 30 points over the seasons we've been with us, but defensively he wasn't at his best since last season, for part of the season before. So not overly sad to see him go, but I wish him all the best.
Yeah, for me, I think it's a great move for Scott Arson, and I think and Braehead, and then the first couple of seasons he was tremendous. Now, some people maybe put that down to Jamie Fritsch. I think that's really, really unfair. I think when the year he played with Jamie, it takes 2 to tango. The 2 of them just complemented each other, and you'd have to say maybe they just didn't have the same chemistry the following seasons with his partners, and there was a lot of mixing and matching going on. But I think in Sheffield, he wouldn't be expected to play top 4 minutes, if you like. He'll be able to probably play on the third grouping. His strength is, well, that old phrase, puck-moving defenseman. That is his strength, to me, and he'll be able to concentrate on that more with Sheffield than they could up here. Graham, is that something you would agree with?
Yeah, 100%. I think Steelers signings this off-season have been exactly what Paul Thompson said he was going to do. He's taken a team which has been fairly successful, obviously not by their high standards, but fairly successful, and what he wanted to do was, rather than just completely start again, keep the majority of that roster but improve in certain areas. And I think he's done that with Scott Arson. Like you say, I think he's probably going to be in that third defensive line, puck-moving defenseman. We know he does that. He's got a good shot. I think he will do a job. The job that he'll be required to do will probably be fairly different to what he's done with the Clan. And as Stephen was saying, there's no doubt that we saw the best of him in his first 2 seasons with the Clan. Be it defensive partner or whatever. I think as part of the defensive unit altogether, he was a little bit disappointing the last 2 years, and certainly the case last season. So, like you say, it could be a great thing for him. It could really see things kickstart for him again. I think I don't doubt that Sheffield will make the best use of him, where they have the resources to be able to accommodate that, whereas we don't necessarily have that. So, yeah, good news, but absolutely massive surprise. I still very much out of left field that signing came from. I didn't necessarily expect him to come back to the Clan, but to end up at the Steelers was a big surprise. But no, best of luck to him. Obviously not against us, but it'll be interesting to see how things pan out for him this season.
Jennifer, Scott Arson has had the most appearances for the Clan by an import player, 243 in the league, and the most assists by any player, 134 over his 4 seasons. I mean, are we overlooking all the things that he did do? Are we being a bit harsh saying, not Ichi Peachy, not that bothered?
I think everybody's forgotten how good that he was in a good a good power play unit. It's just unfortunate that last year power play unit was not good full stop, let alone just down to one player. So no, Tomo obviously sees what Scott can bring to the table and has decided to take advantage of it, and good luck to him. But I think it is quite right that we do have a clear slate with defence, because obviously Tripp will want to bring his own guys that he knows. Which is fine by me. So I'm quite happy for pretty much a clean slate with the defence.
And see, this is the thing. I mean, it's something we can come on and talk to generally, because Scott Arson was the last person that we had to say goodbye to this particular programme. We don't know if Scott was offered a contract by the Clan this year. He might not have had a choice but to move on, but some people assume that he's just decided to go, and it may well be the case that he was offered and decided not to come back. But the thing is, as fans, as a podcast, we don't know if he was offered a contract or not. So, maybe he wasn't, and maybe it was just a case that was the team that came in for him. But you look back to the Fitzgerald thing, where everybody assumed that he'd moved on for a pay rise a few years ago, and it just wasn't the case. He just moved on. It's a strange one, and I think, Graham, the fact that we changed coach this year after 4 years, it is no great surprise that there are not a great deal of returning imports.
Yeah, you would expect maybe 1 or 2 to be retained, but, again, that comes down to what does John Tripp know about the Braehead Clan? Obviously he'll have done his research as he was applying for the job, you assume, and seen what sort of record that was there, and the roster that was there, and talk to undoubtedly people that will know that will be able to give them some insight into things. So, yeah, I'm taking the view, as we've already said, that after last season, with Finner moving on, it's the perfect time to start more or less with a clean slate. And if that means a clean slate in terms of imports, then fair enough. As I say, from my point of view, with some teams going with known quantities by and large, then we kind of know, or we think we kind of know what to expect from some of these teams. I just mentioned Steelers. Their roster hasn't changed dramatically. It looks as if it's improved on paper. It may very well have done, but Belfast suffered from keeping a lot of their roster from one season to the next. So again, it's going to be interesting to see how that pans out. I'd like to think that we're going to be a bit of a surprise quantity, because John Tripp is a bit of a surprise package for the league. Let's be honest about it. And if he comes in and it's it'll obviously be his team. Aside from the Brits, all the imports are going to be his signings. I'm excited about it. It could be anything, but I think you'll obviously have the luxury of a honeymoon period, but we know fan expectations being what it is. The honeymoon period won't be that long. We'll be hoping to get off to a fairly decent start, get some decent results away from home during that extended away trip. And if that happens, then great. So it's going to be interesting, but I don't have any particular problem with starting a clean slate with imports. I think that just makes it more exciting this time round.
Yeah, that's the positive way to look at it, Jennifer. The fact that we're going to have so many new players, that's something the fans can look forward to. The fact, you could argue that, we talk about the Steelers, probably you never mentioned Cardiff, have pretty much kept their core. They know each other inside out. Is it going to be fans having that bit of patience at the start of the season to let the guys knit together?
I mean, it's always the same at the beginning of every new season. You're always like learning new guys. That I think you're right that this is the first where we're completely different with imports. Obviously, Brooksy is a familiar face. The only other season that I remember going from 3 to 4, I think Ash Goldie was the only import returning. But no, it's a new coach, new era, new faces. Bring it on,
Stephen.
Yeah, I'm the same. You know, it's